Ingram, Field Service Engineer here at Chart Industries. Today we're going to talk about preventative maintenance on the SeQual Eclipse machine. Preventative maintenance on the Eclipse should be done at a minimum of once annually on all Eclipse concentrators. That's once a year preventative maintenance should be done. And again, that's the minimum recommended schedule. If you have one in a dirty operating environment that's used more frequently, maybe used outside and things like that, depending on the environment it's operated in, maintenance may be required more often than that. But as a minimum requirement, regardless of hours, these should be done once a year. So in order to do preventative maintenance, you're going to need a couple things. As far as first thing, you'll need an ESD mat for anti-static. There are circuit boards inside of the Eclipse. If you don't ground yourself properly using the ESD mat, you can fry those circuit boards out. So you do want to have an ESD mat. The way the ESD mat works is one in here has this little clip that will go onto something metal to ground it, and then you attach this wrist piece to yourself to ground you so that static electricity you produce doesn't get to the circuit boards inside the Eclipse. So you have to have an ESD mat. As far as tools are concerned, very minimal what's required to do preventative maintenance. Basically, you'll need a number 1 Phillips screwdriver, preferably one with a magnetic tip for removal of screws. And you'll need a pair of wire cutters to cut zip ties that secure the tubing inside of the machine. And the rest of the tools that you need are available in our preventative maintenance kit that's offered for the Eclipse device. Okay, so let's talk about the contents inside of the preventative maintenance kit and the parts that have to be replaced inside of the Eclipse. To do preventative maintenance, you replace 3 filters on the Eclipse. The first filter is the one external to the machine that goes in the back of the cabinet, and that's the air intake filter, these little foam pads. If you order one of our preventative maintenance kits, you will get 2 of these foam pads, the air intake filters. The reason for that is cleaning of these filters. Once a week, these filters should be cleaned by the patient with soap and water. The reason that we provide 2 is because a wet filter can't be installed back into the machine, and the machine can't run for more than 30 minutes without a filter inside of it. So we provide 2, so while one's being cleaned, the other one can go inside of the device. So that's the first filter that has to be changed as part of preventative maintenance. The second filter that has to be changed is what we call a compressor intake filter. This is a white filter like this with 2 barbs on each end, and we'll see this when we go inside the machine, but this has to be changed annually as part of preventative maintenance as well, the compressor intake filter. And the last filter you'll have is a HEPA filter. Now the preventative maintenance kit comes with 2 different HEPA filters. You will only use one inside of the Eclipse. This larger one that's shaped like a disc, that will be used if your HEPA filter is external to the product tank. And the smaller one here will be used if your HEPA filter is internal to the product tank. And again, you'll see the differences when we open the machine up. But these are your HEPA filters. One or the other, you will not use both. So when you order the kit, you can keep the other one for your stock and only use one. Other items inside of the kit, if you have the HEPA filter that's internal to the product tank, there's also 2 O-rings that secure it, and the preventative maintenance kit comes with those O-rings. So those are the 3 filters that have to be changed as part of preventative maintenance. The air intake filter, the compressor intake filter, and the HEPA filter. The air intake filter is external on the back of the cabinet, and the compressor and HEPA filter are internal. So you do have to open the machine up to change those. And we'll get into that in just a minute. The last thing you have to do as part of preventative maintenance is change the 9-volt battery. 9-volt battery on the Eclipse, its purpose is to power these lights on top and the audible buzzer and alarm. This battery should also be changed once a year as part of preventative maintenance to ensure that it still has the charge and is still working properly. So your preventative maintenance kit will come with a standard 9-volt battery. It also comes with a foam pad. As you'll see when we open it up, the battery has a compartment. This foam pad secures the battery inside of the compartment and keeps it from rattling around and making a noise. And the last thing that comes in your preventative maintenance kit is 10 small zip ties or wire ties. Purpose for this, as you note on these filters, they do have tubing that has to be connected on both ends of this one. On the HEPA filter as well, tubing, and some other places you'll have to remove tubing once you get inside of the machine. And every tubing connection inside of the Eclipse needs to be secured with a zip tie. So if you get the preventative maintenance kit, we also give you 10 zip ties to secure all of the tubing. So that's all the components that come in a preventative maintenance kit and all the tools that you're going to need to do maintenance. Again, maintenance should be done once a year, once annually on the Eclipse concentrators, regardless of hours. This is essential to keeping it operating properly and operating up to specification. So now let's open up the machine and take it apart. Okay, now we've got the Eclipse sitting on the ESD mat with the back side up. First thing you want to do before you start removing the case at all is take the battery out, if it has one installed, and just set that off to the side until later. 10 screws along the outer diameter of the case. These will all have to be removed in order to do the maintenance on the machine to separate the front from the back case. These are removed with a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver, preferably one with a magnetic tip, so you can get the screws out very easily. That would be the preferred method. You just take those out, remove the screws, and continue on to the next one. Once you've cut the 2 zip ties, just simply disconnect the tubing from one end, and then from the other end to remove your old compressor intake filter. A couple things to note on the compressor intake filter. Probably hard to see on this diagram, but there is an arrow pointing down right here, and you do want to make sure that that's pointing downward towards the bottom of the Eclipse in this direction. The larger diameter end will be the one that connects most closely to the compressor. So make sure you note that when you have your new compressor intake filter and you're going to install it. So again, the down arrow pointing down, install the tubing there, and install the tubing there. And then you want to take your zip ties that you got in your maintenance kit and secure the tubing on each end with a zip tie, making sure to cut off the excess. Once you have the zip ties secure, make sure the filter is back down. Reinstall the electrical harness, make sure the gasket's aligned properly. And that's all there is to changing the compressor filter. Next thing we'll want to change is the HEPA filter. HEPA filter on one of these new style product tanks is actually internal to the product tank. So what you'll need to do is there's actually a dock right here that the HEPA filter goes in that unscrews from the top of the product tank. And it's on this top portion. So remove the tubing here, cut the zip tie, and remove the tubing to access this port. You can see it's kind of a wing nut on top, and you can twist that, and this is your filter dock. And out comes out your new HEPA filter. So this would be what you'd want to change. It simply unscrews from the dock here. Now once you have the HEPA filter in your preventative maintenance kit, comes 2 O-rings, a small and a large one. This small O-ring you're going to want to replace right where the HEPA filter came in, right there. That O-ring you'll want to pry off and replace it with the other O-ring. Now the second O-ring is actually inside of the product tank, right inside the ledge here where the HEPA filter dock connects. So you want to remove the old one and install this as well, the new O-ring to replace it. This just makes sure that everything's sealed up, that there's no leaks and everything's secured properly. Okay, now that we've replaced both the O-rings, you need to install the new HEPA filter. So you take the new one out of your product tank and thread it in to the dock. And then you can reinstall this into the product tank. Again, it just twists in place. Make sure it's finger tight. Then reconnect your tubing to that barb and secure that tubing with a zip tie. Cut off the excess, and now you replace the HEPA filter and the compressor filter. Last step of preventative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now that you've replaced the HEPA filter, we've changed both internal filters, the compressor intake and the HEPA. The last thing to do with preventive maintenance is change the 9-volt battery. 9-volt battery is located down here, and it simply lifts up. See, it's connected on the top with the connection by these red and black wires. Simply lift that off, remove the old 9-volt battery, and install your new one. Just snap it into place. Now there is one more step to the 9-volt battery. If you'll notice, it has a compartment in here that it goes in. There is a foam pad that comes in your preventative maintenance kit, and this actually lines the inside of that compartment so that the battery doesn't shake or rattle around. This is adhesive on the back, so you would peel this off and install it internally into this compartment and then slide it back in. So now that you've changed the 9-volt battery and the 2 filters, time to reinstall the case. Again, the ribbon cable that runs from the front membrane panel is installed on these pin connections here. And then your tubing that runs to the oxygen outlet is installed here. You will want to secure this with a zip tie as well. Once you've got those secure, you can go ahead and put the case back on. At this point, what I would suggest before you ever reinstall the screws is actually let it run for just a few minutes, just to be sure you haven't kinked any tubing or be sure you left anything disconnected so that the Eclipse would alarm. I would just connect external power to the side here, plug it into the wall, AC power, and let it run for just a few minutes just to be sure there are no alarms. After you let it run for a few minutes, verify there's no alarms, then you can go ahead and reinstall the case. Flip the Eclipse back on its back, and again begin installing the screws. Again, number 1 Phillips head screwdriver is recommended for these with a magnetic tip, because the compartments are a little deep where the screws go in. You can use a drill or a torque wrench if you would like, but it's recommended if you do that it be slow turning and calibrated.